Hello, I'm the Royce critic. I remember it because I don't have a choice in the matter. So, I'm not wearing the jacket today because the heat's turned on because it's finally gotten cold, and so I'm kind of warm right now. I figured it was finally time we finished off what I started and and did my best judgment of the later Goosebumps titles. Okay, come on, where are you? So I'm gonna take me a minute here to get to the where we last left off. Here we go. Goosebumps Series 2. This is where this is where things got a little off the rails, but nonetheless interesting. So, Return of the Mummy. Now, there is no actual return. Well, I guess the mummy does technically return to life, but that's not what the implication is. We follow the same characters, Gabe and his cousin. Also, Gabe has like a mummified hand. No, wait, so. Anyway, but no, this one's actually about this is actually what got adapted. This is the only, I believe this is these books, this one was adapted first out of the two, Mummy books. I don't know if the other one was ever adapted, but I'm not sure. Basically, an ancient Egyptian princess wants to bring her brother back to life. She's maintained her immortality by turning into a scarab at night. I don't know how that happened. And she does eventually bring her brother back to life. He's like, I don't want to be alive, kills her. She turns back into her scarab form and runs away. And then he goes back to sleep, and then it ends with Scarab Princess maybe biting Gabe, and then there's supposed to be this thing about how scarab bites are deadly, even though, like, I'm pretty sure scarabs are just dung beetles, but I'm not sure. But we do have this lovely image with the the fog emanating, or like a spectral mist emanating from the mummy's tomb, with the hand and stuff. Phantom of the Auditorium, an homage, this. Yeah, we'll do, yeah, this is how this is doing it. Phantom of the Auditorium, an homage to the Phantom of the Opera. Kids are putting on a play. They think a homeless man they're being sabotaged by a phantom. They think a homeless man staying under the school is the phantom, but turns out it's actually one of the kids who was a ghost who died. Attack of the Masked Mutant. I think CR said it best. This is the inverse of the hero, or of the like codification of monsters, where vampires, werewolves, they have weaknesses. Jason and Freddy have weaknesses. You eventually learn how to beat them. This is the invert, and so they become less like unstoppable monsters and more just like villains that you could beat. This is the inverse of that. Like, what if your favorite villain came to life and tried to kill you? What if I were given a lethal dose of Scarecrow's fear toxin? Stuff like that. The Masked Mutant is a shapeshifter who can turn into anything. He including liquid, but he can't control his form in that when he's a liquid. Which is an interesting idea. Kid named Skipper, realizes that a building he goes by looks like the Masked Mutant's hideout from his comics. Also, he's one of those nerdy tools who only cares about, like, the value of his comics and stuff. You know, he's an investor collector. I hate those types. As you can see by all my shit that's open, I don't really care about it. About it as long as it looks nice. And you know, it's more about the sentimental value for me. And the book ends with Skipper realizing that he's still part comic book character when he bleeds ink. My Hairiest Adventure, one of the most infamous twists in Goosebumps history. Kid realizes that his whole town is actually run by scientists and researchers, and all the kids are dogs, turned into humans. And when they hit puberty, they start turning back into dogs. The book ends with the kid realizing that they've now done it to their cat. Which, okay. Night in Terror Tower, one of my favorite of the classic covers. Sadly, the Lord High Executioner, the villain of the book, does not look like this, but he should. This evil hunchback in the mask with the axe is awesome. Basically, Prince and Princess are teleported to the 90s from the 12th century or so by a wizard named Mordred. They are given new lives as a pair of American tourists in England. Kind of like a shifting, you know how a lot of magical realism has that barrier that separates the real world from the magical world. Something similar happens where it gives them the basic where it gives them the basics to hide in plain sight. Basically, they don't realize that they are a prince and princess from the medieval times. But that doesn't stop the Lord High Executioner from tracking them down and bringing them back to the past with him. But then they get back with Mordred and go back to the 90s. And turn into Mr. Morgan and his two kids. But the prince and princess died, their uncle usurped the throne. Or the prince and princess's parents died when their uncle usurped the throne. The TV show ends with the Lord High Executioner following them to the future as well. But he's not dressed like this. He's dressed in a black suit with a wide-brimmed hat. It's pretty cool looking. Cuckoo Clock of Doom. This is one of the more weird ones where a kid turns the head backwards on a cuckoo clock and it starts reversing time on him. And it ends with him accidentally knocking his sister's birth year off the clock and erasing her from existence. Now, he does say that he'll eventually go back and fix it, but he's also enjoying his life without her, so it raises a lot of weird questions. You know, she kind of bullied him a couple of times. Does that make it okay that he literally, denied her existence? There's some very weird questions that could be asked here. And also the implication that, that year just does not exist now is weird too. Monster Blood 3. We're introduced to Evan's awful cousin. Let me see if his name's here. Kermit. Oh my god, no wonder he's an asshole. Don't name your kids after famous people, especially not Muppets. So Evan gets revenge by trying to use monster blood on one of his slime experiments to make it expand and grow out of control, but some of it accidentally gets in Evan's mouth. He grows to 100 feet tall. He picks on Conan, who is the bully from the second book. And in the end, he takes a shrinking potion and starts shrinking until he's until he's the Incredible Shrinking Boy. It Came from Beneath the Sink, a weird book. I'm not a big fan of it. The cover is a little cool. Again, Stein's works cover very like relatable topics for kids. So, Night in Terror Tower, getting lost on vacation. My Harris Adventure, puberty. It Came From Beneath the Sink is about moving into a foreign environment and finding weird stuff, and also just having a run of really bad luck. This is a sponge. This is a sponge creature that feeds on bad luck and will generate it indefinitely. The only way to kill it is to say you love it until it dies. You literally kill it with kindness. And then she gets bitten by something. Night of the Living Dummy 2. I never liked Slappy, never read the books. I can't really give much of a commentary. The Barking Ghost. Pair of ghosts curse to the bodies of dogs, swap bodies with two kids. It's in a place called the Changing Room. That's like a shack in the forest, and the kids try to get the ghosts back, or try to get their bodies back, but end up with the bodies of chipmunks at the end. It's a weird book that everyone, but people remember it because of the cover. Oh, speaking of cursed covers, the horror at Camp Jelly Jam. This is about a camp run by an evil blob monster called King Jelly Jam, that runs a sports camp, and the most athletic, able-bodied campers are taken to become his slaves, and they're forced to clean him up and stuff, because he is so disgusting that his own fumes would suffocate him if he weren't constantly cleaned. Which is a really disgusting image. And of course, this is the main character, or this is kind of the main pseudo-antagonist buddy. It's implied that I think most of the characters, or most of the camp counselors, are brainwashed. Buddy is just a follower, or legitimate believer in Camp Jelly Jam, and he even shows up at the end to give the characters medals after they've killed King Jelly Jam. So there'd be no reason for the medals, because those who collected a certain number of medals were indoctrinated and forced to become things. And yeah. And it kind of embraces slacker culture, where it's no, don't work too hard. Summer's about having fun and relaxing. Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes. This is a weird one because it just pretty much says that all lawn gnomes are sentient flesh and blood creatures that exist purely to cause mischief. I remember there's the scene in the book where there's where one of them just rips a chunk of concrete out and throws it into a mailbox, and he's like, see, I had no control over that. Just pure chaos. Which is really funny, in a way. I forget how it ends. I haven't read it I haven't read it since I was 10. A Shocker on Shock Street. This is about a couple of androids who are programmed to be the perfect test subjects for a ride at the Universal Studios style backlot tour. The book ends with them being well, these robots suck. I'm gonna go work on them more. But in the show, they come back online and attack the scientist. Basically, it's it's kind of that old joke about how oh well, they built these animatronics for the dark ride. Surely they can build real life. Which is weird because they did actually revisit this later with The Boy Who Ate Fear Street, which is about a boy who he's also an android. His mom's a doll maker and his dad's a computer programmer. So basically since they couldn't have kids, they pooled their talents and just built their own son. And he accidentally eats pepper because for some reason and that somehow throws his processor out of whack. So he basically eats everything now. yeah, he becomes the boy who ate Fear Street. Anyway, and of course, this is most famous for the praying mantis, which isn't even a real praying mantis; it's a robot. Haunted Mask 2. Now, this there's some contention over this one because I think the book is so much better than the TV version. Like, the original Haunted Mask TV special was both the pilot for the Goosebumps series and one of the best Goosebumps episodes. However, the sequel was terrible. But the book it's based on is actually pretty good. Steve, one of the bullies from the first book, I believe it's Steve. Yep, Steve. He wants to scare these bratty kids. He's got to teach Pee-wee soccer to. And so he gets so he manages to track down the same mask shop Carly Beth went to, against all logic from Carly Beth herself, and gets this mask, which turns him into a decrepit old man. Like, you know, he's literally got a chunk of flesh missing from his head where he can feel his skull underneath. He's only got one tooth. He's constantly old and creaky. And he tries to eat cereal. He tries to eat cornflakes and orange juice. But, like, he has to chew it with one tooth, and it's clinking against the glass. It's just, ugh. Stein managed to put all the fears of getting old into one book. And Carly Beth saves his worthless butt in this. Oh, but first, though, he tries to get revenge on the kids, but he's so pathetic and decrepit by that point that they just help him because they're nice kids. They're just energetic and a little wired. But so they help him to Carly Beth's house, and Carly Beth saves his worthless butt by taking him back to the mask shop and finding the costume that goes with his thing because it's also covered in cobwebs and spiders like his mask. And suddenly the mask just leaps from his face, gets on the costume, and runs out of the building. Because remember, this is Carly Beth after the Haunted Mask. This is Carly Beth with confidence. In the TV adaptation, though, Steve is the hero at the end, which, no, you don't feed a person a live worm and get redemption. You were saved in spite of yourself. Thank you very much. And okay, yes, no one is beyond redemption, and he's just a kid, but still. Oh, the Headless Ghost, another classic one. Two kids love going through a haunted house. This is just a really good collection of short stories. The TV adaptation was a little weird, where we find out, because, like, in the end we find out that the two museum curators died and that their ghosts gave them one last tour before they moved on. But in the book, the museum curator is revealed to be the sea captain ghost, which is the main ghost, who, like, tries to paint her out of existence. I don't know. It's weird and dumb. The TV episode is. The book is actually really good. It's kind of a mini anthology with a wraparound segment of the ghost of the haunted lighthouse. The Abominable Snowman of Pasadena, really good one. Very good. Like, it really sells you on how cold everything is. And they bring the snowman to Pasadena. Like, and like one of the characters is frozen, but then they thaw out the snowman who manages to thaw her out because he's so warm. And then the snowman just runs around causing havoc. It's a fun story. And I like that the Abominable Snowman isn't a bad guy. He's just a creature that they captured, brought back to the U.S. from, like, Canada or Alaska or wherever. I Got My Shrunken Head, kind of a racist book, I'll be honest with you. The only good part of it is the very end where the Shrunken Head talks. And, also really good cover. Night Long Dummy 3, again, I never read those books. Bad Hair Day, Amazo is a evil rabbit who, or is an evil magician who got turned into a rabbit by a real wizard, and um, ends up turning the ends up and a kid steals some of his tricks, accidentally turns his sister into a rabbit, and then at the very end, Amazo is like, "Hey, you want to come work for me?" And he thinks it's going to be performing as his human double, since he's using an animatronic to pilot and stuff. But actually, it's so that he can have a rabbit, that and not perform in his own show anymore, and just be in the animatronic performing tricks. Which, yeah, that's kind of dumb. Oh lord, this one. Egg monsters from Mars. Kid finds an egg monster, takes it to a scientist, is held against his will by the scientist, kept warm in a refrigerator by the eggs. The eggs grab the dude and fly up into the sky, presumably back to Mars. Kid lays an egg. Now, the kid is a guy. So there's a lot of weird questions being raised here. Like, did the egg monsters lay an egg in him? Did they somehow chemically alter him to have egg-bearing parts? There's a lot of gross and weird questions that shouldn't be asked of a children's book. So we'll just leave it at that. Beast from the East. Kind of a weird, boring book about a bunch of made-up rules for a game of tag where the loser gets eaten. Say Cheese and Die Again. I didn't read the first one. Why would I read the sequel? Goosebumps Series 3? Oh, Lord. Oh, this looks to be... Okay. Oh, Ghost Camp. Kids go to a camp that turns out they all died due to like a toxic fog or something. And, the losers... And if they don't escape, they'll get possessed. The main character escapes okay, but his brother gets possessed. How to Kill a Monster. 2 kids are left in a house with a monster by their grandparents. They try to poison it with poisoned pecan pie. It actually enjoys the pecan pie. It licks them and dies because it's allergic to humans. And then they escape the house only to hear the whistling in the background, or in the distance from the other monsters. Also, there's a really good description of the monster where it's kind of implied that it is like almost an elemental being. It is of the swamp. It is from the swamp. It is the swamp. It's got like pools of water for eyes and stuff. It's really good description. Legend of the Lost Legend is really weird. Whoever holds the Lost Legend will be forever lost themselves. The current holder has a bunch of animatronics, something like that. I never read it. Attack of the Jack-O-Lanterns. Aliens pretend to be a bunch of jack-o'-lanterns to scare humans. Vampire Breath. A count comes back from the dead after some vampire breath is given to him. It's some kind of alchemical solution that gives vampires their powers and allows time travel even. It's really weird. Twist at the end, he's actually the main character's grandpa, and he's actually a living vampire. He will turn into a vampire when he is sometime in the future. And then he and his friend go play in the bathroom some more. They find a thing called werewolf sweat and accidentally get them all over themselves and start growling. Typical Stein twist ending. Calling All Creeps. Ricky Beamer, one of the most famous Goosebumps protagonists. Constantly bullied. Accidentally gets confused for the creep commander by an invading alien force, and has the chance to save everyone at the end, but instead chooses to become the creep commander and take some of the identity seeds that turn them into lizard monsters, becoming the leader himself. I love this cover, but it was so butchered by the TV show, which turned them into like just yellow generic monsters, Whereas here, there are these awesome purple raptors with, with just like really good, like it was a really, really good design. And you can tell it very inspired by Jurassic Park. Attack of the Snowman, it's like, I think it's like a demon in a snowman body? I don't know. How I Learned to Fly, kid gets magic dough that makes him fly. This is one of the least interesting covers in all of Goosebumps. Other than an angry seagull, it's just a kid flying, which, like, oh, that's kind of cool, but whatever. Chicken Chicken. Two kids are slowly turned into chickens after pissing off a witch. This is reminiscent of the classic curses of, like, Circe or the Beauty and the Beast. They do eventually get cured by apologizing to the witch because she's, like, obsessed with manners. But then they burp while having soda, and she says pig pig, turning them into pigs. Kind of dumb, but really good body horror. Just like one of the better body horror books. I believe the witch's name is Vanessa. I don't like having characters who are like, I don't like having petty characters with that much power. There's something too, like, meh about it. Don't Go to Sleep. It's kid goes to sleep in a rift in reality, ends up teleported to a bunch of different realities, and is apprehended by the reality police. He eventually finds his way back, and then only for his mom to be like, "Hey, I moved you into the guest room since you wanted it so bad," and he's like, "No." The Blob Who Ate Everything, kid with a typewriter that brings stuff to life, only for it to be revealed that the Blob, it's actually all a story being written by the Blob itself. One of the classic covers, like it's even featured on the front. I think that the Blob That Ate Everything is kind of just a worse version of Monster Blood. Like, Monster Blood is interesting because it's a slime toy. And because Evan Ross is such an interesting character, he's got an interesting cast around him with Andy and Conan, even Kermit to some extent. But the Blob That Ate Everything is just kind of like, I don't know. It's the writer who brings things to life by writing it down type thing. Ooh, this is a really creepy cover. The Curse of Camp Cold Lake. Ghost wants to befriend a girl by killing her, tries to kill her a bunch. Then she's saved by another ghost who's like, "So, since I saved you from her, will you die and be my friend instead?" Which is really dumb. I don't know. My Best Friend is Invisible. Aliens have taken over Earth. One of them has invisible. One of them realizes that he's being stalked by an invisible person who says he's a monster. But it turns out the invisible boy was a human the entire time. Whoa! This is one of the funniest covers too. Like, look at that cat. He is just pure horror. Also, really good drawing of a sliced pizza. It makes me want pizza. Sorry. Deep Trouble 2. I think this is about, like, fish stuff. I didn't read it. Oh, Lord. The Haunted School. So, this, I think Stein ripped off, also, like, look at this cover. This is a good cover. Also, it actually kind of channels what the book's about, because you have this very, like, this very, like, colorful school background, but then all the stuff coming out of the locker is in monochrome. See? All the text, even the textbooks and shoes and stuff. And the eyes. Look at the eyes. So I get the feeling that R.L. Stine was inspired by the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror for this, because a Goosebumps Haunted Maze opened up in Disney Hollywood Studios, back in the early 90s, and alongside the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror, and which involves you entering the fifth dimension, or the fourth dimension, whatever it is, with with black and white stuff. And this is about using an elevator to get to a black and white dimension outside of space and time where everything is monochrome. I wonder. But, you know, inspiration is nothing new. I've definitely taken inspiration from a lot of stuff. Werewolf skin, channeling the classic skinwalker mythos of Navajo and ancient Celtic mythology, wherein you can turn into an animal by donning their skin. Kid finds out, realizes that his aunt and uncle are werewolves and that they transform at night. Whatever. And they're addicted to their transformations. So on Halloween night, full moon, he and a friend steal the skins and wear them around town, pretending to, you know, as the aunt and uncle tear the town apart looking for their werewolf skins. They're eventually saved from themselves, but then the girl turns out to be a werewolf and she attacks the boy, presumably turning him into a werewolf then. I Live in Your Basement. A weird psychological one that I really don't understand. I never read it. I heard a podcast about it. It sounds weird. Monster Blood 4. These are not actually Monster Blood. They're an undersea fighting force or something, and they end up getting... I think they end up killing them with hot sauce. I can't remember. But it's one of the goofiest covers, too. Like, look at these little blue slug monsters with big lips. Finally, as we get to Series 2000... Come on now. Cry the Cat, one of the most classic... One of the last classics. Here we have our villain, Rip, who is an undead cat that brings himself back to life by clawing humans. And when he claws them, he absorbs some of their life force, but imbuing some of his DNA in them, turning any who he scratches into a cat creature. And at the end of the book, Rip resurrects an entire pet cemetery of ghosts, and turns them into a massive tornado of, like, bones and spirits to attack the protagonists. And at the very end, they have defeated Rip, but they are still partially cat monsters. Not to the extent the lady who created him is, who created Rip is, but still, like, they hunt a field mouse. Bride of Living Dummy, Slappy takes over a girl's body, and his quote-unquote bride takes over her brother. Yeah. Creature Teacher. Mrs. Marg is one of the more grotesque characters because she's got, like, she has, like, big stinking feet, and you have to tickle them to defeat her, which is kind of a really weird, like, it's weirdly fetishy. I don't know. Invasion of the Body Squeezers. These guys can, like, take over your body by literally squeezing into you. Oh, hey, here's a wall cover. Excellent artwork, by the way. Just cover to cover, good work by our man, Tim Jacobus. I Am Your Evil Twin. Cloning gone awry. We find out that the boy and his cousin are actually brother and sister. They were split up at birth between the mother and uncle. And honestly, that plot is way more interesting than the evil clone plot. And it's a shame that the evil clone plot took over the book, because I would rather it just be about them talking about being brother and sister for the book, like, because not realizing that you have a sibling is such a good idea. What was this one? Revenge R Us. I never read this one. I think it's about, like, curses or something. Ends up with the main character turning into a frog, I think. Fright Camp. A campy horror director named R.B. Faraday runs a camp that it's basically one of those extreme haunted houses where it's a reality show and he's filming you and he's trying to make his magnum opus. So it's almost a snuff film, but he doesn't try to kill people. it does end with the kids turning the tables on him and scaring him instead. Uh, are you are you frightened yet? Is kind of the non-supernatural version of You Can't Scare Me, where a kid accidentally showcases bravery and has to do so in increasingly disturbing ways. Headless Halloween, boy dies and is told the only way he can go back to the land of the living is by getting forgiveness or something, but no, it just turns out he's dead. This is probably one of the darkest endings in all of Goosebumps. But he seems relatively okay with it. He was a bully in life, and he still gets to be a mischief maker in death. What is this one? Oh, Attack of the Graveyard Ghouls. Ghouls, or a couple of ghosts possess a boy and a girl, kicking their spirits out of their bodies, and they basically play musical chairs with other ghosts, trying to get back, or with other creatures, trying to get their own bodies back. Eventually, the boy ends up in his little brother's body to try and get back in his body, and it ends with them getting their bodies back after the two ghouls who took over their bodies wreck the town. So they're in a lot of trouble, but they end up in the wrong bodies. The boy ends up in the girl's body, and the girl ends up in the boy's body. But they actually seem pretty okay with it. Which, a nice transpositive message, if albeit unintentional. Brain juice, aliens give kids a serum that makes them super intelligent to make them slaves or something. They get out of it by pretending to be dumb again. What is that one? Oh, Return to Horrorland. A pair of TV show hosts want the main characters of Horrorland to go back to it to record what they saw, to bring them on TV and stuff, and it was actually all a test to make sure that the horrors didn't, to make sure that they weren't going to rat the horrors out, and they still escape. What is this? Oh, Jekyll and Heidi, werewolf story. This actually has nothing to do with the book. This excellently made art piece has nothing to do with the book. Scream School. Boy is the son of a famous scary movie director. He ends up terrifying him and being the true Scream guy. The Mummy Walks. I haven't read this one. It's something about war-torn Middle Eastern country. I don't know. It's weirdly political, I think. Werewolf in the Living Room, one of my favorites, one of my favorite endings. Aaron Friedis is a dad who's obsessed with werewolves. They're out in Europe, and Aaron gets bit by a werewolf, doesn't tell his dad, doesn't know what it means, even though he should, being that his dad is such a big werewolf buff. They do capture a werewolf and take him back to the U.S. Aaron transforms, and hijinks ensue, and it ends with Aaron biting his dad, and the three of them going out into the woods. Horror of the Black Ring. Ring has evil spirit in it. Girl defeats it by having it possess a dead bird. Really creepy face in there. Return to Ghost Camp. This isn't actually the same ghost camp. This is a cursed camp with a fox spirit, and the main character defeats it by tricking it into drowning itself. Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid. I think this is about a card game or something that turns real, like Dungeons and Dragons gone real is what it is. The Ghost Car, really good cover. It's about a girl who died in a car, and she wants to keep being evil by doing stuff. I don't know. Or she wants to stay on the mortal plane by keep doing bad things. But she accidentally saves the main character in the end, and that sends her to heaven. So she's like, no, I don't want to move on. Full Moon Fever. Two kids piss off a witch, get turned into kind of werewolfy looking critters. And at the very end, they think they've defeated her, but they accidentally eat like shrink bars or something. Slappy's Nightmare, didn't read it. What is this? Earth Geeks Must Go? Haven't read that either. This is where they start getting really goofy, I guess. Ghost in the Mirror? Oh, very lovely picture, but I haven't read this either. The Incredible Shrinking Fifth Grader. I think this one didn't actually get released, and it was instead released under a different name with a different thing. And then here's some unreleased covers from Goosebumps Gold. You have The Haunted Mask Lives, where we see Carly Beth getting re-consumed by the Haunted Mask, and then Happy Holidays from Dead House, where we see this very creepy wreath that looks like a skull with bells for teeth. And then let's see here. We have some nice little things here where where we see kind of the Goosebumps stuff that is. What in the world? Oh, these are posters from the movie. The Invisible Boy's Revenge from the movie, yeah. So yeah, that is the Goosebumps book. How is it? It's pretty good. But there's the Goosebumps art book. How is it? Well, the art's pretty good. The stories that the books that the art depicts, well, they range from good to bad. No author is perfect. R.L. Stine is, R.L. Stine's the same as Stephen King or J.R.R. Tolkien. Sometimes he just had off days. Sometimes, everyone is human. But that's going to be it for me today. I hope you all have a happy Halloween. This is Royce Miller. I'm outie.